Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So, wherever you are in the world, we're so excited to have you here with us today. So, let's start by getting to know our audience for today. Please go ahead in the chat box, and put down the country that you are from. So, even if you're joining, from Europe or States or Asia, of course. Please drop it down below. We'd really love to hear from you and to know where you are from. Okay, so hello from the Philippines, and good evening to you. So, before we dive in, let me introduce myself. My name is Kyla, content specialist at InUni Global, and I'll be your host for today's webinar. And joining us today is a very beautiful speaker that we have. It's a pleasure to have her here today. It's Maria Hedian, the Vice President of Career and Internship Services at LIM College. She's a New York-based fashion professional with 20 years of industry experience and is dedicated to helping aspiring fashion professionals who struggle to land their roles for the very first time. Of course, we are joined by an expert, and she's here to, help launch their career successfully with confidence. So it's a pleasure having you with us today, Maria. How are you?
Great, great. Thank you. Hello, everyone.
Thank you so much. So today's webinar will give you a clear real world look at what it takes to succeed after graduation. So we'll be exploring what employers actually look for when hiring, the career paths available across industries, and the kind of experiences that truly improve long-term outcomes. You'll also learn from LAM fits into how LAM fits into your career journey beyond the classroom, building skills, confidence, and making connections that add lasting value. And here, it makes us, um, this webinar will make you feel how LIM experience a powerful foundation for, professional growth as well. So before we head on to our discussion, just a few housekeeping rules. Before we begin, today's session will be recorded and you'll receive a link to the replay after this webinar. So we will also invite you to participate actively by submitting your questions at any time using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. So our speaker today will respond to as many questions as possible if we have time. And for anything we're unable to cover live, our team will be happy to follow up with you via email. So now that we've, set the stage, I'm very excited to pass things on to Maria, who will be bringing this topic to life. Take it away, Maria.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. As Kyla said, my name is Maria Hedian. I'm the Vice President of Career and Internship Services at LIM College. Now, in my role, my entire focus is on outcomes, not just getting students to graduation, but really helping them turn their degree into a career that actually works in the world. So today we're going to be talking about return on investment. And in fashion, ROI isn't just about salary. It's about access, skills, experience, and whether your degree actually positions you for long-term growth in such a competitive industry. I should also say I'm an LIM alum myself. So what I'm sharing today isn't just professional insight, it's personal. I went through all of this and I've seen firsthand how it shapes careers. Now, as we talk about the road to your fashion career today, I want to call something out that's really important before we get started. Fashion careers rarely follow a straight line, and that's actually okay. Because what matters is most is momentum. It's the skills that you use, it's the experience that you can talk about, and most importantly, it's the confidence to step into professional spaces without feeling lost. That's really what ROI means in this industry. It's not perfection, but it's progress. So now, out of curiosity, I want to know what excites you the most right now about getting into the fashion industry. Is it the creative side? Is it the business side? Is it both? Or maybe you're still figuring things out. If you can, drop it into the chat. I'd love to see some of your answers. Now, some of you probably already know, what's exactly you want to do. Some of you might be somewhere in the middle, and some of you are still figuring it out, which is honestly most people. I see some people putting both. The glam, yes, definitely. Now, what's interesting is that employers are looking for that same blend. Okay, I'm sorry. I was just trying to change the slide here. And one of the most important things when employers hire entry-level talent today is that they're really looking for a mix. Creativity still matters, and it matters a lot, but it's not enough on its own anymore. They want people who understand how ideas connect to brands, to customers, and most importantly, to the business behind everything. And this is usually the part that makes sense pretty quickly. Fashion lives online now. Everyone shops online, follows brands on social media, interacts digitally, and is influenced by one way or another by data or technology every single day, whether you think about that or not. So, having some awareness of how that world works just makes you a little bit more effective in any role. Adaptability is another big one. Roles change, tools change, platforms change. The people who do well are not the ones who know how to do everything. They're the ones who are open, who are curious, and who are willing to learn as they go. And then there's professionalism, which honestly, in my opinion, and many employers tell us, matter now more now than ever before. In a digitally obsessed world that we live in, how you communicate, how you manage your time, work with others, and handle feedback really stands out. That's usually the difference between someone who completes an internship and someone who's going to get asked to stay full time with the company. Now, when students ask, what can I actually do with a fashion degree? This is usually where things start to click. Our graduates don't all end up in one lane. Some work in branding, in marketing, consumer strategy. Others move into product development, merchandising, operations, business performance. We also see students go into analytics, into finance, and into decision-making roles that support how brands grow and scale. They're working in consumer led, brand driven organizations across fashion, luxury, lifestyle, global business environments. And just to say it out loud, most people do not graduate knowing exactly where they're going to end up, and that's 100% normal. Now, in a moment, I'm going to show you examples of the companies that hire our students, which usually makes this feel a lot more real. And this is why we put so much emphasis on transferable skills at LIM. You're not just training for one specific job title, you're building a foundation that gives you flexibility, that gives you confidence, and it gives you options as your career evolves. So, this is where things really start to change. It's often the part where students don't expect to be as valuable as it is, but it ends up shaping everything that comes next. Internships and work experience shows what jobs actually look like. The pace, the expectations, the workflow, and just as important, they help you figure out what you don't like doing. That kind of clarity is really useful, and this is the best time to get it. Applied projects give you the chance to practice making decisions, solving real problems, and working with others in a way that feels realistic, not just theoretical. You get to test things out before the stakes are high. And being exposed early to industry standards, deadlines, accountability, teamwork, it makes this transition into full time much smoother after graduation. You're not walking in cold, you've already been in it. So it's much better to learn what doesn't fit during an internship than it is during your first full-time job. And that's exactly why LMM is so intentional about how students learn. You're not just sitting in classes, hearing ideas, and hoping that they make sense later. You're actually using what you're learning, applying it to real scenarios, real projects, and real decisions that look a lot like what happens in the industry. Along the way, you're building skills that you don't, lock in when with you, they don't lock you into one role or one path. They carry with you as your interests change, as the industry shifts, and most importantly, as your career grows. Because program events and employer connections are built into the experience, you're also getting exposed to how things really work, whether that be expectations, timelines, professional norms, much earlier than most students do. So that by the time that you graduate, none of this feels foreign. It feels familiar. And that makes a big difference when you're stepping into your first role.
Thank you, Maria. If I could just say something, we've been talking about how LIM emphasizes the importance of transferable skills across different functions and industries. So with that in mind, I do have a question for you.
Sure.
Thinking back on your time at LIM before. So, what would you say would be the most valuable skill that you've gained during your studies? And once you stepped into the real world and started your career, how did you find yourself applying those lessons in a practical day-to-day way?
Honestly, it's been so long since since I went to LIM, but I will say one of the things I remember the most is just how resilient you have to be, how much you need to want to do this. At the time, I remember going to school and working full time, both of them full time, and traveling across two different, states, going from New York to New Jersey every day. And I don't know how I did it. I had classes, I had homework, I had work. I was a visual merchandiser for a store called Neiman Marcus. So I had a job that most people could work full time in. And so it was a matter of being able to really prioritize the things that needed to get done, time management. And I know these sound like cliche answers, but it really prepared me later for when I went into the workforce and worked in corporate because time management, preparedness, really understanding what your priorities are comes into play a lot when many people want to have a meeting with you, want to do this, want to do that. You kind of, if you didn't have that practice and if you didn't have that kind of sense of doing that, you would be overwhelmed, especially as someone new into the workforce. So I have to say, it really prepared me. School really prepared me. In that way to really organize myself, my thoughts. I think it's a time when most students have a really good time and they're just kind of taking classes and going to school and they have their friends and they have their things. But I think little by little, especially as you get to your senior year, it really is important to understand time management, how to prioritize things, and so that way it sets you up for success once you go into the corporate world or into just whatever you want to do.
Thank you, Maria, for sharing that. I do agree with you. You have to be really resilient. And I think that's one skill that everyone, including me, including us, has to work on, not just when it comes to their careers, but also, their everyday, day-to-day work. So it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a piece of pie every single day.
Mhm.
So we have to be really, persevere in everything that we do and determined. So, thank you so much again for that. Now, let's move on to discussing more about what it is inside LIM College, what it feels like.
Great. Well, so now that we've talked about the bigger picture, we're going to zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to walk you through what that actually looks like at LIM. So it's the environment, the experience, the kinds of opportunities that students are surrounded with every single day. Slide, please. Now, being in New York City means students are, excuse me, surrounded by the industry while they're still in school. It's not someday, it's right now. When students volunteer at Fashion Week, when they work on projects with real brands, or when they hear directly from industry leaders, they start to understand how the industry actually operates day to day, how teams work, how decisions are made, how quickly things move, especially in New York. It's less about being impressed and more about gaining perspective. The industry stops feeling abstract. It becomes something that you really can understand from the inside. And that context and that information, that experience, it really matters when you start making choices about where you want to go after school. Slide. And so that brings us to our majors at LIM. These are LIM's undergraduate programs. So instead of me going through each and every single one of them, what matters most is how they're designed. Every single major is built around skills that employers actually look for. So whether you're drawn to marketing, merchandising, media, leadership, or the business side of fashion. While their focuses might differ a little bit, the goal through all of them is the same. It's preparing you for real roles. And career support helps students connect what they're studying to how those roles show up in the industry. Slide. Now, the honors program is something that is completely optional to students, but it can be a really great fit for some of them. It's designed for those who want a little more challenge, more connections, more access, and that might look like smaller honors classes, closer relationships with faculty, industry mentorship, priority registration, which students love, and the biggest one, even a study abroad scholarship. And the part that, the best part about it is that it doesn't pull you away from your career goals. It actually works alongside everything else that you're doing, and it can be a really nice complement to the path that you're already on. So as you can see here, there are specific requirements for eligibility, but it's something that, we encourage students as they kind of come in to think about from the very beginning to see if this is something that's going to be a good fit for them. Slide. Now, for those of you who might be thinking about our graduate study, either now, later on down the road, LIM offers a range of master's programs. A few of them are STEM designated, which can be especially important for international students because of the potential for extended OPT. We've also recently launched an MBA program, which reflects how fashion and lifestyle businesses are becoming more complex, more global. It's a fantastic new program. And then beyond program titles, what really matters is how these degrees are designed. They're built around how fashion and lifestyle businesses actually operate today. So think of it as things like analytics, supply chain, marketing, luxury, strategy, and technology. So whether you're going deeper into data, into strategy, or even the business side of this industry, the focus is on the skills that are relevant and that are in demand in the industry right now. Slide. And now, this is one of the biggest things that truly sets LIM apart. And this is going into my department, so I'm very excited to explain all this to you guys. Now, at most schools, students are encouraged to intern, right? The students can intern anytime they want, but they're usually doing it on their own time, maybe with some limited guidance and hoping that it all works out. Here at LIM, internships are not optional add-ons. They're actually directly built into our curriculum. All undergraduate students complete 3 required internship or experiential learning courses. That includes preparation, multiple internships, and a senior co-op. And as you can see here, I know that it looks a little bit more complicated than it really is. I promise it's not. We start with an internship prep course, which is pretty much the fundamentals. Here you're learning how to write a resume. You're learning how to look for goals or how to understand what your goals should be in terms of your career. You're really learning the very, very basics of what it looks like to look for a career in the industry. Internship one usually means that you're getting yourself a part-time internship within retail. One of the biggest pieces of advice I personally give students, but that the school does as well, and my department does as well, is that there's no better way to start in this industry than working in retail. You really, if you take advantage of it, you really get so much out of it. And so we do have students that go into part-time roles within retail, whether that looks like a store setting, working in visual merchandising, working as a sales associate, as a personal shopper, but they really get that experience, of seeing shoppers, consumer behavior, just everything around you when you are in a retail environment. From there, they move into internship two, which is now a part-time corporate role. Or for those students that want to remain in retail, we just ask that they have a different role. So either they move up or they're doing something different. The key here is that they're always learning, they're always doing something that's going to be added onto their resume. From here, we go into another prep course, which we call Senior Co-op. And Senior Co-op essentially gives you all the tools for really searching for jobs and setting you up for success once you graduate. It's giving you fundamentals in a different way, slightly higher, more elevated than that first internship prep course to set you up for a senior co-op, which is a full-time corporate experience. And so this structure is very intentional. It gives you time to explore, to learn what you like, what you don't like. We talked about that before, and to build momentum before graduation. Now, my department supports this entire process through coaching, employer outreach, Handshake, which is the platform that we use for internships, jobs, events, appointments. You're never figuring any of this out alone. You're going to be guided through it from us. And I'm going to share a real example here. My senior co-op, my senior internship was at Ralph Lauren. And that internship was actually acquired through my career services department. And it led me into my corporate career. They actually created a role that didn't exist before so that I can join their marketing team full time after I graduated. And that's what this structure makes possible. It's why our students are more competitive earlier than other students. Slide, please. Now, this is where those results really, really show. I'm not going to bore you with statistics, I promise, but I just want to point out that 95% of the class of 2024 were working in the business of fashion and lifestyle, or they were continuing their education within 6 months of graduation. And that shows up in the kinds of roles that students are stepping into. As you can see here, these are just some examples: marketing coordinators, assistant buyers, merchandising roles, social and digital positions, analyst roles. The list goes on and on and on. And that reflects preparation, experience, coaching, and access. It's not just luck. And this is what happens when curriculum and career strategy are actually working together. Now, once you see the roles, the next question I usually get is where. So, in a minute, I'm going to show you just some of the companies that hire our students.
Thank you, Maria. But before that, I just want to add something. So, as students look ahead to life after graduation, since we're already here in this topic, I'm very sure that many are curious about what the first step into the professional world actually looks like and what surprises might come along the way. So, since we're already talking about careers and outcomes, that students can expect, I love to hear a perspective from you. So, if you can share the typical challenges that graduates, often face when making the jump from, school to their first career, and maybe also, give a couple of tips on how to navigate through it, if it's okay with
Sure.
you,
Yeah,
Maria.
of course. I think right now the biggest thing I'm seeing every, recent grad, every early career professional kind of talk about and tell me about is the fact that they're looking for something, they're reaching out, all you hear is network and reach out and cold outreach and do all these things. They're doing all the things and they're not hearing back. And so that, or they'll get maybe an interview and then they're ghosted and then they don't hear back. And that seems to be a very big issue right now with students in general. And I think my biggest piece of advice would really be to remember that you really just need one opportunity, one person to say yes to you, right? To not you have to keep going, and especially this industry, you really need to have thick skin and you really need to have that resilience to continually pick yourself up. If it was, your dream role, if it was something you really wanted, you applied, you didn't get it, or you're not hearing back, don't be discouraged. There's going to be something else for you. And the biggest thing I could really say is just remember you need one person to say yes to you. That's really all we're looking for here. Because if one person says yes and you take up, advantage of that opportunity, you really give it your best, that opens the door for new things. And so it's really important to give your all. I gave the example of my personal career going into Ralph Lauren. I went into it as if it was my full-time job, even though it was an internship. And I was there first before all the other interns. There were like 30 other interns at the time. I was the last person there. I was in charge of the interns after a while. And so they saw my work ethic and they saw that I made myself stand out and I made myself be there day in and day out. And they created a career. They had a job. They hired me afterwards. And so all you need is that one opportunity, that one door to open. You go inside of that, you give it your all, and then you are putting yourself in a position for them to notice you and your work. And that can open so many doors. And I always think if a door doesn't open, it wasn't your door. It wasn't meant for you, right? So you just have to keep pushing forward and have that resilience to continue doing what you're doing, bettering yourself. If there's, taking more classes, more certificates, more lessons, whatever it needs to be, just bettering yourself in the process, but just having that resilience to continue forward.
I love that. I love that you said, keep on trying. And yeah, for those who are aspiring to really be in the fashion industry or any kind of industry for that matter, you'll never know and you'll never get an opportunity until you try. So there will always be ups and downs. So you keep going because you don't know. Might be the next challenge that you face or the next um, obstacle that you'll face. You might not know that that will be the biggest push for you to be on the top or the biggest push for you to go to the next step. So keep that in mind. Thank you so much for that, Maria. I do hope our audience for today has picked up so much from you. So yeah, I'll give the floor again to you to discuss more about
Thank
the
you.
companies.
Thank you. All right, so here's that where, right? These are just some of the companies that consistently hire LIM students and alumni, whether it's for internships, for senior co-ops, for full-time roles. And this doesn't just happen by chance. It happens because employers know what LIM students are trained to do, and they trust the preparation and they support that they receive along the way. I can't tell you, and I promise that I'm not making this up, I can't tell you how many times when I reach out to different companies or when, we're in the process of doing a lot of events for the spring and I'm calling them and I'm trying to see if they'll come in, they'll tell us, oh my gosh, your students are amazing, or we hired your student from internship to full-time role because they just get it. They're just ready for that, to work for that side of the business. And so what's important to know is that many of the people working at these companies are actually LIM alumni themselves. A lot of them come back to LIM, whether it's to speak with students, to mentor them, and in many cases to hire them. And that's why we try to actually have them come back and meet our students because that opens that door and that relationship for our students to start speaking to people that were in their shoes just a couple of years before them. And this is how it becomes a real connection pipeline. It's not just a list of impressive logos. It's actually a perfect lead-in to the speaker series because this is where these connections start to take shape. Slide, please. So now the speaker series is something that's really close to my heart. I created this last fall. I started back at LIM last year as a professor before I actually stepped into this role as vice president. And when I was teaching, I saw firsthand that students were incredibly smart, but they weren't getting enough chances to practice being in rooms with professionals. Things like holding a conversation, making eye contact, asking thoughtful questions, following up afterwards. These skills aren't always being built naturally. Unless you practice, unless you have the opportunity to do them, you're not really doing them day to day. So instead of waiting for students to find the industry, I brought the industry to LIM. The speaker series was created last fall to give students real exposure to professionals at different stages of their careers across different roles and companies. So we had students, or rather alumni and speakers that were, just graduated and they just started in the industry. We had CEOs and presidents, and every single person that came in talked about their journey. We asked them about their journey because I wanted to show students that this path is not a straight line and it's not the same for everybody. I mean, I could tell you, I never thought if I would never thought I would be in the position I'm in today, having started in the industry and corporate. And so none of us have linear paths. None of us know what we're really meant to do or going to be doing. And so it was really interesting to bring in these speakers to talk to our students, not just about their journeys, but about, roles that they might have not been familiar with. AI, tech, all these things are changing how the industry looks. And so we really wanted to give them real exposure to professionals at different stages of their careers across all these different roles that are starting up. And not just to listen, but to engage, to hear real stories, to learn about the paths that they didn't even know existed, and to start really practicing how to show up professionally. A lot of the people who participate at LIM are alumni themselves, and they come back to share their experiences. They come back to mentor and work with our students. And in a lot of cases, once they start to do that, eventually they might hire them either for an internship or for more in the future. And that really creates really powerful familiarity, trust, connection. And this is where our students start learning how to build those professional relationships in a way that feels natural. It doesn't feel forced or transactional. And that's a skill that they're going to be able to carry with them long after graduation. The amount of students that have given us feedback and told us how important or how special the speaker series was, I didn't think it would be as popular as it got. And it really was created to give students that opportunity to be able to have these conversations to prepare them for things like career fairs, which we're going to learn about in a second, and just different events and things in their careers, networking events that they're going to have to be going to. Slide, please. So once students started having these comfortable conversations, they're asking the questions, they're following up, they're showing up professionally. The next step was to put everything into action, and that is where career fairs come in. Now, our career fairs are designed very intentionally to meet students where they are. We offer both virtual and in-person fairs. We actually just had our very first in-person fair after 6 years this past fall. And virtual fairs allow students to connect from anywhere. They schedule one-on-one conversations and they attend sessions with employers. And like I said, for the first time last fall, not only was it our first in-person career fair in over 6 years, we introduced keynote style talks and TED style format to allow students to hear the real stories at scale. Now, the in person fair this past fall was the largest that LIM has ever had. We had over 600 students that attended. There were real moments happening, as you can see in the picture in the room. There was one offer that was made on the spot from a company called Zimmerman. There were resume reviews, there was pitch practices, there was opportunities for students to engage with employers in ways that felt approachable and human. My whole, goal with the career fair, the in-person one, was to build experiences that allowed students to feel welcome and comfortable. I think career fairs sometimes can be a little awkward, can be a little nerve-wracking. It's a whole room with people that are, interviewing you very quickly all day long. And so I included things like LinkedIn headshots, a fashion illustrator, a coffee cart, a hot chocolate cart, hair touch-ups with Amika. We had a VIP student lounge, with music. It was very, very relaxed on purpose so that it can build that confidence for students that day because confidence matters. And if there's anything that you take away from this, let it be this. Confidence matters more than anything else. I think in this industry, you really need to have thick skin, but you need to know what things you can do. And if, not everyone's going to see what you can do, but you have to be able to believe in yourself and you have to be able to say, if I can't do it, I'm going to learn it and then I'll do it. It's not a matter of, it's kind of like what I said before. If you're falling, pick yourself back up and do it. And so that confidence matters, especially in this industry. And how you feel, walking into a room changes how you show up in it. It changes how you interview and talk to these companies and to these recruiters and hiring managers. By the time students are networking in these spaces, my goal is to not make it feel intimidating. I wanted it to feel familiar. I wanted them to feel like they practiced. Many of the students that went to the speaker series came to the fair. They knew how to ask the questions. They knew how to talk to the professionals. They knew how to engage, and that really made all the difference. And we're not stopping there. This spring, we're actually launching something new called Career Connect Week. And it's a full week of mini career fairs, if you want to think of it that way. It's a more immersive, multi-day experience. And the goal is to bring together employers, alumni, industry professionals across different formats. So we're going to have panels, conversations, workshops. And the goal here is deeper connection, not just quick conversations, but really meaningful ones with top brands. And it reflects how we as an organization, we as a department are constantly evolving in the way that we want to support students as the industry changes. Slide, please. And now this is where, long-term ROI really shows, and we're going to bring it back to that. None of this ends at graduation for you. Career Services supports students and alumni at every single stage of their career, whether you're looking for your first role a few years into your career, or you're ready for your next step, or maybe you're thinking about a pivot later on in your career. Alumni have access to everything you see here and so much more. You have access to career coaching, to job support, workshops, events. They're always invited back to participate, to network, to stay connected. We're actually hosting a large alumni networking event this April that's focused specifically on helping alumni across new opportunities. And we're also actively building out more support for alumni who are 10 plus years out, from school, graduated, and then so many years into their careers. Senior levels, executive alumni, because careers evolve, priorities change, and a lot of these transitions don't stop after your first job. So our program heavily helps recent grads. It helps students that have been out 0 to 5 years. I would say maybe even up to 10 years. But right now, we are trying to build a stronger program for people that have graduated even further out because everyone needs support. And whether you're just getting started a few years into your career or at that senior level, Career Services at LIM is really something that you can continue to come back to as much as you need it. And we're here to help.
Thank you very much, Maria. So, for sharing actually the real and practical instance that you have. So, can I just say that when you touched on the career fairs, I got really excited about it, even if I'm not a student. So I'm really looking forward to the upcoming career week that you'll have.
Yeah,
And I'm very excited.
my background is in, I mean, I've done, as you could probably hear from this webinar, I've done a little bit
Mhm.
of everything, but most recently before this, I was in event production. So I was actually a Fashion Week show producer for about tw 10 years. And so that I kind of took everything from event production and I put that into into the fair, into all of these events, and just I really wanted to make it something that students didn't feel so nervous about, because I think that's the biggest thing with career fairs, right? You walk into a room, it's a whole bunch of tables, it's a whole bunch of companies, and then you just kind of expected to turn on, and go from one to another, constantly repeating yourself, constantly maybe answering questions. And I think not everyone is extroverted. I can tell you I'm an introverted extrovert, and not everyone is ready to just talk. And I think a lot of these things help them to just relax a little bit. We had the fashion illustrator who was literally just she took 3 minutes and would just paint what you're wearing and give you like a little card of yourself, that day. And we had, a hair touch up, and we had makeup touch up, and all these things. And so it's just it was a way to make them feel more comfortable.
Yeah, and actually, Fashion Week is a huge thing in the fashion industry, right? So bringing that in LIM, making them experience what it feels like in the fashion industry, that means more fun and exciting activities to look forward to for aspiring students here at LAM. So thank you for bringing that idea to life. So, now hearing about your experiences and the skills you've gained, it really gives us a clearer picture of what to expect and how to navigate challenges and still enjoy the journey of studying. So I'm very sure not only it's not only inspiring, but it also gives, our students, more confidence and then more determination and inspiration to take the next step. So now let's move on to our Q&A portion where we'll be diving into some of the questions our audience sent in. So we do have actually a lot, so we still have time. So we will be answering some of those. I'm very excited to dive into it. So, for the very first one that we have, I know this was already discussed earlier today, but for those who are in our audience who just went in, could you practically tell us what skills and competencies do employers consistently look for in the fashion graduates or um, the graduates that are coming from the school from LAM?
Sure. So this is definitely broken up into two different ways, two different things. You have soft skills and you have hard skills. We talked a little bit about the soft skills. We talked about resiliency, time management, just kind of organizing of your time, right? Organizing of your projects, prioritizing. But the hard skills portion of it, one of the biggest things we're seeing from employers, a lot of our students, in these internship roles, we send them evaluation surveys. So we get direct information from these employers where we ask all these questions, because one of the most important things, at least for my department, is to really understand not just what they're looking for in students, but how they're changing. So if they're using new systems, new programs, new platforms, what are they? So that we can kind of see, okay, how can we integrate that into the studies? And that's something that I, in this position, am constantly looking into. I can tell you tech and AI is huge. And so that's why I'm saying, if you can get yourself certified, even if it's outside of, school, certified, take some of these free certifications that exist, some of these things that show you how to use some of these platforms. It's really important to be able to say, you go on an interview, and I always tell students this, if, you learn about something briefly. You don't have to be an expert at it, right? But if you see that in the job description, it's asking you that you need to know a specific, platform, or a specific, let's just say ChatGPT, even though everyone I think uses it or knows how to use it. Let's pretend it's something that it's not so widespread. And so if they're saying we want you to use this app, we want you to know how to use it, if you go into that interview practicing seeing what the app does, asking it questions, just playing around a little bit, learning a little bit about it, and you go in and they ask you, "Do you know about this app, this platform?" The better answer, even if you don't know everything, is to say, "Yes, I know some," or "Yes, I'm a beginner," versus the person that ignored that and went in, they're like, "No, I don't know how to use it." Right? So it's one of those things where get a little bit of knowledge and information, especially if it's something that's in the job description. Get yourself those skills to use tech, to use AI. It's the way of the future, whether people like it or not. It's what more and more companies are using. But I would say Excel is right there as well. Some people love it. I personally love it. Some people hate it, but a lot of companies use this in different ways. And so get yourself acclimated and used to using Excel. And if you're not good at it, practice and read more about it. Try to see videos and things of that nature that exist. There's so many. So I would just say it definitely is a matter of soft and hard skills, with the skills being, platforms and programs that a lot of companies are using. And I would say definitely keep in mind the tech portion, the Excel portion, and see what the job description asks of you, because that's really going to be your indicator that's going to help you stand out in an interview over everyone else, is how you answer the questions that they're pretty much asking you in that job description, the things that they're looking for. How are you using that to better yourself and better that interview?
That is true. Even especially in the fashion industry, everything's evolving really fast in
Mhm.
just a snap. So, whatever industry you're in right now, AI and technology is really the number one way to go for everything.
Mhm.
So, it really gives you the edge. So thank you so much for that. We do have another question. I know that this has been tackled already also earlier today, but what are the most common concerns prospective students raise when asking whether a fashion degree is worth it or not?
I mean, it's hard to say in that sense because, a lot of students, I think, can have a degree in fashion and go into something else, just like people can have degrees in other things and come into the fashion industry. But some of the things that I have heard, I think students, it really depends on how you apply yourself and how resilient you are, how much you put yourself out there. You have this degree, but what you do with it. I think a lot of times I can tell you personally from, and I keep going back to myself because this is the stories I can tell you, right, from personal experience. But I graduated with a marketing degree. Did I stay in marketing? No. Did I learn what I needed to learn to get me out there and properly market myself, understand what I liked, what I didn't like in the industry, the things that I wanted for myself in my career? 100%. I took that degree. I started with it. I went into the company that I worked in at Ralph Lauren under marketing, but I started to see that I liked certain things and I didn't like certain things. And what stood out was the event portion, right? So that kind of led me to say, oh my gosh, I want to work on events and start from the bottom and kind of take the skills that I already learned, take the things that I learned with that degree and started to A, market myself, but B, what did I learn? What can I bring into this next thing? And how can I grow in that? And made a whole nother profession for myself that had nothing to do with marketing, but still understanding the things that I learned with that degree. Marketing is all around me, just like you could say merchandising is all around you. The business aspect is all these things are around you day to day, but it's really just taking what you have and making it your own, taking the pieces that fit and that the pieces that you learn, the things that you learned, and taking that into real experience to understand what you want, what you don't want, and moving forward that way. Everything is trial and error. And I feel like people look at, I think students or early career professionals look at senior level people and they think, oh, they have it all figured out, but everything has been trial and error. Do I like this? No, we're not going to do it anymore. Do I like this? And I don't mean, do I like this assignment? I'm not going to hand it in. Or do I like this project? Screw my boss. I'm not going to give this to them. It's more of, do I like, the company culture? Do I like, being in this particular field within the industry? Or maybe what you caught your attention is, I like sustainability. This company isn't sustainable, so this type of company isn't for me. Or I really like the startup vibe. I like the smaller company vibe versus a giant corporation. So it's things that, as we said before, getting an internship first and doing this trial and error is wonderful because it's the things that a lot of students in other schools have to wait until they have a job that's a little harder. Now you've signed a contract, you have something more, real, more solid that it's going to be harder to get out of. So I would say really taking everything you've learned with that degree and really making it your own, basing it off of what fits, what doesn't fit, what you like, what you don't like, and kind of taking that and just growing with that.
I love your answer, actually. Yeah, so sometimes we learn later in life that this is not the career for me or whatsoever, but as long as the passion's there, right?
Mhm.
You get to learn from it, even if you're, 40 years old, 50 years old, as long
Yeah,
as you
it's
take
never
a
too
certain
late.
step. Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's never too late. So thank you so much for that. Another question. So how has the fashion job market evolved in the recent years, and how does that impact graduates today?
Oof, the fashion market, just like everything right now, I think is something that makes students worry. It's something that is worrisome. It's not, but it's never really truly been 100% stable. Nothing is. I think I can tell you when I graduated, it was a different type of we had the housing market crisis right as I was graduating. I'm telling you, I graduated a long time ago, so many of you probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But I graduated at a time when it was similar to this. Companies were closing, there was bankruptcy, there was all this chaos, and I remember thinking, I have my degree, I have student loans, I need a job, like what's happening? And so I think it's something that is always going to be, we're never going to be 100% solid as I think as an industry, as a world, like there's always going to be something. And I think that doesn't stop the roles from existing. I can tell you firsthand, whether it's, here at LIM with students I work with outside of LIM, there's roles every day that are posted. There's companies every day that are looking for people. So that doesn't stop businesses from moving forward, from operating. Does it stop some of them? Yes. But the overall industry continues and continues to move forward. We saw this in COVID. We saw that, during those times, no one really knew what was going to happen. And so we shifted. We went into the virtual, remote world and way of working. And now we're back. And so I think there's always going to be something, and there's always going to be something we're all fearing, and that's normal. Things are never going to be 100% stable, but the industry continues to evolve and continues to move forward. And with it, whether it's new roles, whether it's, existing roles that open up, companies that get larger, all of that continues to flow. And so I would say, yes, it's normal to worry and to have fear, but at the same time, it's a part of all of this, and the industry does continue to move forward. There are roles every single day that are opening up, and I've seen that firsthand. I'm not just saying that to make people feel better. There's companies that are looking for internships every single day. They're opening these intern programs, these summer programs, and a lot of them, like I said, if you do a good job, they can hire you. And so those are kind of the entryways and pathways into the industry too.
Fantastic. Thank you, Maria. So we do have another question. This is actually very interesting. So can you share some of the examples of non-linear or unexpected career paths fashion graduates often take?
Unexpected and often. It's like an oxymoron, right? I
Yeah.
would say, I mean, it can be anything. The reality is here we're seeing a lot of roles that are opening up that we would have never thought was something before, right? Things that, yes, have to do with tech, but also have to do with sustainability. I've been seeing a lot of students, a lot of careers that start out in the fashion industry, but they start to get into the legality of sustainability. The really caring about the environment and how these things are produced, and kind of going into sourcing and kind of going into these different things that are not necessarily marketing, merchandising, business, right? It's going into how things are made and how sustainable something can be. We've also seen things that students are going into. There's a lot of, actually, there's a lot of entrepreneurship that has come out of fashion as well. And I think that I don't know if it's because of the industry and what we're in. I can say that myself. I started my own business, during COVID as well. I think people kind of get a taste for the industry, and again, get a sense of what they like and what they don't like, and then maybe say, this is missing. I can do this, I can make this, or this doesn't exist, or I can do this better. I have a better way, or I have a faster way, a more efficient way. And I feel like there's more and more people that are going into these spaces of I can do that, or why not try, or let's start this, or let's create this, similar to what we're seeing a lot of online when it comes to, I don't want to say influencers, but that whole entire segment of the industry has blown up, whether it's, influencer marketing, with whether it's getting these deals and these brands and becoming a voice for a brand that we would have never seen before. That goes into more a completely different kind of scope within fashion, but still kind of goes into something new. So I think from these things, there's it's not that far from fashion. It's not super nonlinear, but in a way, it's not your traditional fashion roles that you're starting to see more and more of. And so I think we are venturing into some new territories across all different parts of this industry, whether that be from tech, from sustainability, from influencing, from just that aspect of it all, is what we're seeing more and more.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, since we do have just a few more minutes, maybe we could just answer two more questions before we end this session. And then for the rest of the questions, again, we'll be sending it via email. We'll be answering it via email. Okay, so on to the second to the last question. What role does industry exposure play in helping students understand the realities of the fashion workplace?
Oh, and this is huge. And I know we went into it a little bit inside of the webinar itself, but the fact that students have the opportunity to see day to day how a company does what it does is incredible. I think not just to understand what you like and what you don't like. Let's take as an example, if a student is interning for a PR agency, right? They're not just, you think PR, you think fashion shows, or you think events, but they're actually getting that knowledge of understanding how to write a press statement, press release, understanding how to, and I started as a PR intern. So going into an office and understanding, for this role, for this brand, who mentions us in magazines, who mentions us in websites, and collecting all that data, understanding how they, even just the fashion show portion of it. It's not just you show up for a show, you have a list, that says you can come in and you can't. It's not just that, the team can put together the seating charts, and even just that, some of these shows have 200 plus people, and you have to think about who would make sense sitting next to someone or who would not make sense. They get access to working with companies, reaching out to companies. I remember as a PR intern, I was reaching out to companies to come into tour our showrooms. So I was having conversations with all of these different very high-end, companies or magazines or, leaders in that space to come in to look at our showroom, to walk them through it, to have press days. And so they're learning very specific practical skills that, yes, shows them whether they like something, whether they don't, but also shows them this is what your position and what your career could be. Are you interested in this? Is this something you like? Also, you're working with these teams alongside of you. So, as the example for PR, you're working with marketing, you're working with advertising, you could potentially be working with the styling team, you could be working with all these different teams that kind of gives you access to think, ooh, I like what they're doing. Let's learn more about that. And the beauty of it is, if you are in a larger company, right, you do have access to a lot more of these sectors and departments within it. And so you can go ask them. It's not a matter of going to LinkedIn and looking for someone and asking for a coffee chat. You're working with them. So you can pull them aside, you can ask them some questions, maybe ask if you can shadow someone for a day, and you really get that exposure not just to what you're, there for, but potentially what other people do in the office as well, in that company as well, and you have that opportunity to have access to them, even if it's just to ask them questions. But it could be something even as big as shadowing them, as getting more information, as spending a day and getting yourself, that information so that you can kind of decide and determine what you want to do as your next step, whether that's another internship, whether that's a full-time role, but really understand what you want to do in the future for your career. But it really gives you that access. If you take advantage of it, it really gives you the information that you need to take your next step.
Very well explained. Thank you so much, Maria. On to our last question, actually. I think this is going to be also a good one because a lot of our students are wondering what and how they could answer this one. So, how does earning potential and career growth differ across fashion, luxury, retail, and related industries?
That's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that, how does earning potential, honestly, I think that the most important thing I can tell students when it comes to earning potential, when it comes to opportunities, especially at the stage when they're a student, when they're getting internships, is to not just think about or look into the shiny companies, right? The big names. Uh, and it's something that we all do. We all want to work, you think fashion and you think some very specific names that you want to work for. But the reality is a lot of the smaller companies are have some of the strongest programs and they have some of the strongest um, intern to hire percentages. And so, if you're looking into fashion, don't discredit off-price retail, off-price retailers, smaller startups, companies that can give you more hands-on experience. I think the earning potential is going to be different, not just in the company name. You would think that bigger company names pay more, but that's not always the case. I also think it depends on the skill sets and the experience that you get. So, for example, if you are going into a startup, let's say, or something that you're going to be wearing multiple hats, the experience you gain from that, even if that first role or that experience may not pay as much, whatever the case may be, the experience that you're getting there, you've done all of these things that maybe at a larger company you're not going to be doing. That all goes into your resume, right? And that all goes into the speaking points and the experiences that you can talk about in an interview. And so that right there, putting aside the names of the companies, putting aside all of these things, that right there is you growing and you kind of increasing that earning potential for yourself because now you've got all these experiences under your belt that you can speak to that you've done that you might not have done at a company that is larger, that maybe, you're doing something very, very specific and that's the only thing you're doing. Sometimes in smaller ones, sometimes in more specific programs. And I brought up off price because there's a lot of partners that we have right now that are off price that have fantastic programs. And that, if you are a student that's just looking to come into, the Chanel's and Gucci's of the world, you're going to miss out on some of these other experiences that really offer hands-on training, that offers so much valuable experience, and that many times are programs that they directly put you in a position to learn a lot so that they can hire you. They put you on that track to be hired. And so I would say it's less about the big names, when you're starting out especially, and it's more about really growing your personal earning potential, growing the skills, growing the experiences, bettering, all of this for interviews and to be able to talk to these experiences, but also looking outside of what we typically see as luxury fashion. It's not to say that they, aren't amazing and it looks amazing on your resume, but it's to say that, if you're not finding luck there, if you're maybe finding it difficult or maybe find something else, there are other options that will give you a bigger, sometimes bigger ROI.
Amazing answer. Thank you for that, Maria, for answering all our questions for today. I'm very sorry for those who asked the question, but we were not able to address because of time constraint. But before that, before I end this session, we also wanted to know, Maria, if you have any parting words or any short advice you could give our audience for today, especially to those who really wants to be involved in the fashion industry.
Put yourself out there. I think the most important thing in this industry is to have a voice. And so, what that means is, make that Instagram account that's just purely visual, make that portfolio. A lot of students don't realize that portfolios are not just for visuals or for creatives. You can have a portfolio and go into marketing. You can have a portfolio and go into merchandising, into PR. It's just a matter of how you build out, but have a voice. Link that portfolio, link that account that you're growing, that Substack that you're writing in, all the things. Link those into your emails, into your social platforms, but put yourself out there so that when when someone reaches out to you or someone is curious about you, they get to hear your aspect, your interpretation of the industry. I think that's one of the most important things, is having a voice in this industry. And it really starts now. I mean, social platforms, there's so many to pick from. And it's really just a matter of not just educating yourself on them, but also having something to say, having a voice, having a space in the industry so that, professionals, recruiters, hiring managers can get to know a little bit more about you.
Thank you so much, Maria. And that wraps up our session for today. A big thank you to everyone who joined us and for all your participation. It really made this session very lively. And a special thanks, of course, again to Maria for sharing very relatable and helpful insights. Everything was well explained from your end, and your answers gave us, a real sense of what it's like to navigate LAM and, step into the professional world. And, I think everyone who are here right now have walked with, really valuable takeaways. So before we go, don't forget to check out our LIM College's social media pages made especially for international students. We can't wait to see you at our next webinar. So until then, take care and keep exploring all the exciting opportunities ahead. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.